What's up guys, Justin here with the RenderingEssentials.com. So in today's video we're going to model a building and work on a building that we're later going to render. So this is kind of one of the new things that I want to try on this channel because a lot of the time I need more examples, and so I figured I would just build in modeling the buildings and stuff like that as a part of the content on this channel. So if you want to see the modeling, I'll break that up into its own section. If you want to just see the rendering, I'll try to break that up into its own playlist. So that way I'm able to come up with examples, model them, show you how I'm putting them together, and also how we're doing the renderings. So let's go ahead and just jump into it. Alright, so a lot of you may remember that I actually started speed modeling this particular lobby back on the SketchUp Essentials channel, and I will link to the first part of that, and I'll probably add that to this playlist. But really what I'm trying to do is, this is a building at Kenyon College. It's called the Goon Gallery, and what it has is it's got this really nice like wood look on the inside, but it's also got a lot of really interesting sunshades and other things like that. And so I really wanted to kind of model this out, kind of play around with the light, and just kind of see what we could create with it. So I will link to more information about this particular building. In this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding materials. So you can see I've got a few materials in here already. So I've got like the SketchUp aluminum material over here. We may replace that. I haven't really decided. But I just kind of wanted to walk you through the process that I'm going to follow in order to do this. And so to start off, what we're going to do is I'm going to start adding my materials, but I'm also kind of trying to keep an eye on things like the casing that needs to go right here. So what I've done is I've modeled this kind of separately, and I probably should have tapped the control key in order to put this in create new face mode. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to keep these things a little bit separate, and I'm probably going to pull this off maybe like 1/4 of an inch or something like that, just so we don't get any Z-fighting in here. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to keep my wood panel material on the wall a little bit separate from like the wood trim that goes around the opening, because that's going to be a detail that really kind of makes this look a little more realistic. And so maybe what I would do in this case is I would actually pull this out so that it kind of matches up with this corner piece. And I don't know, we'll go ahead and put it so it hangs out over this edge here. We'll kind of see how that looks. We may have to come back and play around with this a little bit, but I'm going to pull this geometry out just a little bit, so now I've got a casing in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start adding materials, and a lot of the time what I do is I like to download my own custom materials. So a lot of you know that like SketchUp has built-in materials in it, but if you apply them to something and you zoom in, you can see how they're real grainy and they're not super high resolution. So what I like to do is download my own, and there's a lot of different options for that. And if you guys are interested, I may make a video about different places where you can get things like that. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to use I'm going to use some textures, some POLIIGON. You could also try like a SketchUp Texture Club, has a bunch of free textures. POLIIGON has some free textures, but it also has some textures that are paid. But the nice thing about these is they come with all these different maps, like your normal maps and stuff, which is something you can plug in your rendering to make them look bumpy and more realistic. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start off and I'm just going to add a couple materials in here. And one thing I might do is I might create a view where I've turned off my exterior wall, just because sometimes when you're rotating around you kind of like fly through the walls and it gets a little bit annoying. But we're going to start by adding a wood panel material, and so this is a material that I have downloaded from POLIIGON, and I think it was, let me look, let's see, it's a wood panel material, there we go. It's this one right here. So it's a wood paneling that goes on a wall. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring that in using the materials section in SketchUp. And so we're just going to call this wood paneling. I usually like to label these with where I got them. So partially just because that way I'm aware of how big they are, because that's one thing to be aware of when you're doing this, is these materials are a lot larger and you need to be a little bit careful just because they can slow down your model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find this folder that these came from, and inside this folder there's all these different maps and other things like that. Well, in this case, I want the color map is what I want. So the _COL. So I'm just going to bring that in, and we're going to start off, we'll go ahead and apply that to the wall. So I'm just going to click on the wall right here. We're going to apply that to the wall. So the first thing you're going to notice is this is way too small. This is something a lot of people get wrong about doing texturing for their renders, is they really don't pay attention to how big or small these tiling images are, and so they look kind of weird. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring these up. I'm going to go to the Edit tab. So I'm going to select the material. I'll use the eyedropper. I'm going to go to the Edit tab, and I'm just going to select this size, so maybe like 5 feet or something like that, and I'm going to type a different value in there. So you can see how in this case we typed in a value of 5 feet. I still feel like that's a little bit small, so we're going to type in a value of 10 feet and hit the Tab key. Or you can hit the Enter key. And what we've done is we've kind of resized this so that it fits on the wall. There's a few details though that you need to pay attention to when you're doing this. Like for example, you can see how on this wall right now these panels are kind of hanging down below this trim piece, which is not an accurate way of how this material would look in real life. And so what we're going to do is we're going to right click on this texture, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to position this. And for now I'm going to try to avoid scaling it. I may have to. I'm going to try just dragging this push pin up a little bit. You can see I've got a little bit of a problem here in that now I have the panels showing on the bottom. And so what we can do is we can actually use this push pin, this green one, and click and drag it out a little bit to adjust the scale. And so when I adjust the scale on here, you can see how we made this just big enough that now we're not seeing any of those seams anymore. So this is going to look a lot more realistic. And one thing that you may do with this is you may want to take this and maybe like rotate it or something like that. So you can use position texture, and you can right click on it and click rotate in order to rotate that if you want that to look a little bit different. So you can kind of adjust this however you want to. And now looking at this panel material, I may want to try to find something else just because I like the way that this looks, but the way that these are kind of jointing together in here isn't necessarily what I want. So, but for right now, we'll go ahead and leave it as is. I'll rotate it back 90 degrees, and we'll go ahead and hit enter. And so we have that material applied to this face. Well, now what we want to do is we want to sample that material, and then we want to start applying it to other faces as well. And so in this case, this material probably on this wall would be rotated. So I'm just going to come in here, right click, and I'm just going to rotate it. And then we're just going to position this using position texture so that it's kind of centered on this wall. And you may have to resize this a little bit. You kind of have to be a little bit careful when you do this. You kind of have to be a little bit careful that you don't make the panels look way bigger or anything like that. But what I'm doing for right now is I'm just placing that so this panel is kind of facing down the wall. And you might also maybe not rotate it if you want this to have the same orientation. You just kind of have to think about the effect you want to create. I'm going to go ahead and leave this for right now. But then I'm also going to sample this, and I'm going to apply it to this back wall over here. Again, paying attention to the way that this texture is positioned. So paying attention to the way your texture is positioned is going to be really important because it's really going to affect your realism. Again, there may be a little bit of resizing and adjusting involved depending on the textures that you're using. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of centering this on the wall. I'll go ahead and hit the Enter key, and we're going to go ahead and call that good. And so, I mean, really that's going to be what your texturing is just figuring out what your textures need to look like and then placing them on your faces. So it's not rocket science, but you just have to pay attention to those details and try to make these things fit as well as you can. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to apply the rest of these this wood texture real quick, and then we'll come back and we'll take a look at some other things. And so one thing you may consider doing, depending on the level of detail that you want to get into, is you may want to consider creating like a trim piece or an edge piece off of all of these. So like for example, I might think about modeling out maybe like a, I don't know, half-inch thick piece right here. And then pulling it down to create kind of a piece of wood trim that goes around the edge. And again, this depends on how close up you're going to get with this, what you're trying to do, but what you may consider doing is doing that and then applying some kind of more of a wood panel texture. So something that maybe doesn't repeat as much as this does, just to kind of break this up and make it look a little bit more realistic. And so I'm going to go ahead and keep going because we've focused on this wood a lot. I'm downloading a wood panel material that we'll apply to this in a minute. But what we want to do, so we'll apply that same wood panel material to the base and also along here, but we're just going to find all of these different materials and go ahead and apply them. So in this case, like for example, I've got a floor group. We're just going to bring in a tile material. So floor, tile. And we can go ahead and come in here and apply this to this face. And so in this case, this one's actually a little bit too big. So I'm just going to sample this, and I'm just going to adjust this one down maybe, so that it's maybe like 5 foot by 5 foot or something like that. And then I'm also going to right click on it, and I'm just going to position it. I'm going to right click again, and I'm going to rotate it so it's facing the direction that I want it to face. So now we've got kind of our tile floor in here, and we've also got our wood paneling in here. And when my actual wood veneer is done downloading, we'll apply that as well. But now let's go in here and let's apply a metal material to our handrails. And so metal is one of those nice materials. It's a little less complicated just because you don't necessarily need it to be super detailed, and there's no tiling issues really, assuming that you have it mapped in here properly. And so we're just going to apply a metal material, and in this case I'm just going to use a SketchUp material. I may end up adjusting this a little bit later, but we'll go ahead and apply the aluminum material to this for right now. I think that's going to look good. I may swap it out if I go into like Lumion or something like that. And I think we're also going to apply that to the exterior of this face right here, or this object right here. And again, just be careful of the way this is tiling on here, and make sure that you don't have like a repetition of the same pattern over and over again or something like that, because that's not very realistic. The nice thing about this one is because it goes up and then across, even if you have tiling issues, it doesn't really look very, it doesn't really look like it's much of a problem, just because you can't see the image tiling over and over again on each face. And so probably, because this is going to be our wood veneer material, that's going to be our wood veneer material. We have tile applied down here. Probably what we would do is we would also apply this wood veneer material up here, and just again be careful of the way that that's tiling in here. So right click and position it, and I think this is why there aren't a lot of really detailed tutorials on how to do this kind of thing, because it's just kind of going in and fixing little things over and over again. So like I'm just going to find different things on this wood paneling, for example, that are working or aren't working, and I'm just going to move this around and I'm just going to fix them. So I'm just trying to make this look as natural as possible. You can see I'm doing a little bit of resizing, a little bit of up-down movement. A lot of this really depends on what your application is going to be. And so what you want to do is you just want to go through and you just want to apply these materials to the rest of your faces. So we'll try applying our tile to this. That may get a little bit weird. Yeah, those are probably gonna, you're probably going to want to do these individually, which is nice if these are all modeled as components, because you only have to do it once and place it once. And for this case, I'm going to use this texture, but I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to click Make Unique Texture, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to position this, and then we're going to apply that to the rest of these. So I'm just going to rotate this one 90 degrees, and in this case I want to make this a little bit smaller, so I can kind of get some kind of a tiling look along this stair. So you can see I'm kind of dropping this down until my grout lines line up, and you may want to take a grout line like this and put this point on it, and then find another one like this one and just kind of drag it in until it fits. And I believe when you do this, you can also tap the arrow keys to do like a fine adjustment of your material. But you can see how now I've got this tile material applied to this face in here, and I kind of like the way the grout lines look. So, and then I might also position this texture just something kind of like this. And so we've got our tile material applied in here, and the last thing I'm going to do for this tutorial is, well, first of all, I'm going to finish applying the tiles to each one of these faces. And one trick you can do with something like this is you can see how the uniform scaling is getting a little tricky for me. What you can do instead is you can right click and you can uncheck this box for fix pins, and then you can just set pins on the corners where you want this to be. So like for example, I want all of these grout lines to line up with the corners of this face. We're just going to assume it's kind of a custom tile. So you can just place each one of these pins like this, and then drag them where you want them to be. So obviously you have to be a little bit careful because you're creating some distortion in your image here, but you can see how I was able to come in here and resize this so that it fits on this face really easily using those fixed pins. And so you can see how, again, I'm just coming in here and fixing things as I go. So like I cut this out and then I pasted it inside of this component right here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to realign this material so that the grout lines line up. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're just going to bring our wood panel in here. So for our wood panel, I'm just going to import the material that I just downloaded. So I'm just going to do the same thing where I'm going to create a new material and we're going to apply that to all of these different base pieces and things like that. Once you do this, if you want to, depending on how you want to keep all these things grouped, you can do a select all with same material and drop them in a group. That's kind of a personal preference thing of how you want to do that. So in this case, this actually looks pretty good. So we're just going to go through and we're just going to start applying that to all of the other faces as well. And you may want to look at some things like, for example, this texture. I'm probably going to rotate that because I have a feeling the grain would probably run the other way. So we're going to go ahead and rotate that, and then we'll probably sample that texture in order to place that along the other edges. And so I'll probably fix the underside of this outside this video. Basically what I would do is I would just come in here and I would extend out the wood base piece over here, and then I would apply this material right here. But now, if we go back to our scene, you can see how we have all of our materials applied. We might come in and apply like a drywall material to the ceiling or something like that, but we're ready to start placing furniture and then taking a look at how to render this. So this is kind of a test video to see how you like this format. So leave a comment below, let me know what you thought. Was this helpful to you? Was it too long? Was it too in-depth? Did I skip any steps? I just love getting that feedback from you guys. I want to make videos that are helpful for you. If you like this video, please remember to click that like button down below. If you're new around here, remember to click that subscribe button for new rendering videos every week. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I really appreciate it, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.